Today, we're ranking all of Illumination Animation's villains from worst to best in our official tier list. And we're starting with the lamest villains. This is the D tier. Our pick for Illumination's worst villain has to be from one of Illumination's less impressive films, Carlos from Hop. Whether you love or hate this movie, it's hard to deny that Illumination's second feature film is one of, if not its absolute strangest. Carlos is the second in command to EB's father, the current Easter Bunny, and he's ready to take on the role himself. But while he does end up being the main villain by the end, Carlos himself doesn't really pose any threat.
It's time for the Easter chick to rise!
Heck, the guy never even had a plan to begin with. He just used the opportunity of EB running away to try and fail to convince his boss to pass the torch to him instead. When that fails, he frames Fred for killing EB, which was disproven literally moments later when his supposed corpse was revealed to be an uncooked turkey. We call Carlos the worst villain because he not only fails to be a legitimate threat, but he isn't even particularly evil when you think about it. A jerk who's willing to usurp his boss's position? Sure, but when you think about it, he really just wanted a chance to go for the job he dreamed of. The Easter Bunny had every right to turn him down, but he didn't have to straight up laugh in his face. In any case, Carlos only was a threat during the final act when he got his hands on the Egg of Destiny, and even then, he was defeated by the power of drumming. And no, not magic drumming. EB just started drumming, and all the other chicks couldn't help but get distracted. He loses even more points for putting Phil in charge of guiding the Easter sleigh, who he knows from experience is easily distracted and loves dancing. A master strategist he is not. The other entry in our bottom tier goes to the villains from the original Sing, Mike and the Bears. Really, it's debatable if these guys even count as villains in the first place. Though to be fair, they're certainly the closest anyone in the movie comes to being so. Mike is an arrogant street performer mouse voiced by Seth MacFarlane who gets into debt with some angry mafia bear dudes who end up threatening Buster as a result of Mike being unable to pay his debt. While the Bears are certainly evil, they're just collecting the debt that villainous debt collectors would be expected to. Had Buster not kept up the lies about how much prize money the competition would yield, it wouldn't have spiraled this far out of control. As for Mike, it's not like he's some villainous mastermind or anything. While he is a jerk, he at least showed some remorse for getting the theater destroyed inadvertently. We place these guys above Carlos, simply because they're more serviceable as antagonists and overall characters. And admittedly, Mike's pretty funny if nothing else. Now we move on to the characters who are a little more threatening, or at least more intriguing. This is the C tier. We had to debate whether or not to include him, but Drew Gru from Despicable Me 3 deserves at least a brief mention. Drew is Gru's long-lost twin brother, whose father refused to teach him villainy due to his more hyperactive and incompetent personality. When they finally reunited, Drew asked Gru to give him lessons in villainy, which Gru accepted, as a guise to get his job back with the AVL. Despite being a villain by career choice, Drew isn't an outright evil character. He doesn't hesitate to help rescue his nieces when they're kidnapped by Balthazar Brat, and ultimately makes up with Gru, with the two of them even keeping a tradition of cat and mouse chases, as villain and hero, respectively. He's not a massive threat, but he's a fun character, so we felt he deserved a shout out. Much less on the fun side is Sergey from The Secret Life of Pets 2. This guy is one of, if not the most despicable villain in the studio's history. He's an abusive circus ringmaster who's training Who, a rare white tiger cub, to perform for him, and threatens him with death if he messes up.
If tiger does not do trick, tiger will become rug.
Now, if the goal with Sergey was to make him seem like a legitimate threat, it wasn't really a success. As we see in the movie, he's taken out by a dog, a rabbit, and ultimately an old woman who probably should not be driving. It's also not clear what Sergey is trying to do in particular, so we really just see him as this dirtbag who's a terrible owner to his white tiger. On the other hand, if the goal was to make us simply prey on his downfall, they nailed it. Like we said, Sergey is a vile human being, and having him get run over twice was a very fitting fate for him. Rounding out the C-tier villains, we have Grinch from The Grinch. Illumination's take on the Grinch isn't the most popular one out there, but it has its strengths to be sure. One of those strengths is his backstory, which actually fleshes him out nicely and explains why exactly he hates Christmas so much. That said, while this iteration of the Grinch works well as a protagonist, he doesn't really do it as a villain. He has an impressive arsenal of gadgets and a couple reliable animal buddies, but he just isn't really menacing at any point.
This is our enemy.
He looks like he whitens his smile, not like he keeps termites in it. We all know Christmas isn't actually getting stolen for good, but come on, at least let us think it is for a few minutes, man. Reaching middle of the road territory, next we have the villains who are serviceable enough as antagonists. These are the B-tier villains. Kicking off this category is Scarlet Overkill from the first Minions movie. The legendary celebrity supervillain is beloved by many fans from around the world. With a ludicrous amount of weapons, gadgets, and stolen goods at her disposal, she's more than happy to add the minions to the collection. Her next target is the Queen's Crown, which she plans to use to overthrow the Queen, which really could have been done with the ridiculous amount of weapons she has at her disposal. Yeah, that's the thing with Scarlet. She has a really cool arsenal of weapons and gadgets, but she kinda just expects everything to be handed to her. That's why she enlists the minions to steal the crown for her and threatens to have them tortured and killed if they fail. Even when they ultimately succeed and give her the crown, she still has them tortured for it, not knowing that, as we've mentioned before in previous videos, the minions are basically unkillable. She had potential for sure, but her sense of entitlement left most of it untapped. Next on the menu is the chef from Illumination's Migration. While from a human perspective, this guy's not really guilty of anything but being a jerk to his employees. And ducks. To birds, he's an absolute menace. Not only does he deprive Delroy of his natural habitat, keeping him locked in a cage constantly, he also chases the Mallard family relentlessly to catch them as revenge for messing up his kitchen. Getting outsmarted by ducks isn't really the best look, but sometimes a simple villain is the best kind. And the chef's presence actually added some nice tension into this otherwise lighthearted movie, elevating it a little higher than it would be otherwise. Our next entry, truly larger than life, is El Macho from Despicable Me 2. His top-notch physique, as you can see, already earns him quite a few points. El Macho was a supervillain thought to be deceased, but in actuality he was just laying low and managing his restaurant, Salsa and Salsa. I recommend the Salsa, but the salsa is pretty good too. Salsa wasn't the only thing being made here though. He also took advantage of a serum called PX41, which turned the minions into malicious purple killing machines he planned to use in order to take over the world. His intellect was pretty solid, shown by his ability to even frame an innocent store owner at the Paradise Mall to get the AVL off his back. All around, he's pretty solid, but more screen presence would have definitely been welcome with this guy. Now we're really getting into the threatening foes, starting with Maro Hair from the Lorax. Aside from being a sort of meme icon, Maro Hair, ironically sharing a last name with a good guy from an earlier Illumination movie, is a scummy businessman who's created a monopoly on air, of all things. We're honestly not sure how to judge him as a villain, though. On one hand, it's hard to take him seriously because of how goofy he is, especially in terms of his eccentric threats and ways of trying to convince the town that it's his way or the highway.
I'm Frankenstein's head on a spider's body!
On the other hand, he's successfully kept an entire part of the world from learning that you can get oxygen for free. At the end of the day, he's a fun character and a decent threat, placing him in a fairly respectful spot on our list and just inside the top 10 actually. Rounding out this category, we have Snowball from The Secret Life of Pets. Let's get one thing out of the way. Snowball is the best part of these movies. Like, by far. That's not even a dig at them, you just can't expect us to not love a gang leader bunny voiced by Kevin Hart, of all people.
You deserve to be eaten by the viper.
While Snowball is technically the antagonist of the first movie, he doesn't get too much focus. As the leader of the Flushed Pets, he plans to destroy humanity by any means necessary, with his only real redemptive quality being his loyalty to and respect for his friends. In the movie's last act, he pretty much goes on a rampage, and while the other pets miraculously survive, he's defeated only by the love of a little girl who takes him in, driving him to become a literal superhero in the second movie. Is he a world-ending threat we're itching to see taken down? No. But is he a decent antagonist and an absolute blast of a character? Absolutely. With that, we close off B tier and move on to the villains who really pull their own weight, both as antagonists and characters in general. The A tier is up ahead. We're giving the first spot in this category to 5/6 of the Vicious Six: Bell Bottom, Jean Claude, Svengeance, Stronghold, and Nun-Chuk. First of all, those names. Those character designs, that alone is a tier worthy. But how do they work from a writing standpoint? Well, aside from being fun to watch, we see them from the very start of Minions. Rise of Gru, establishing them as threats who aren't to be trusted. Having them betray Wild Knuckles and leave him to die at the beginning of the movie was a great way to show just how ruthless these guys were. On top of that, their transformation in the final battle was impressive and led to them being among the villains who came closest to victory. Were it not for the minions' kung fu mastery and Wild Knuckles' coming in clutch assistance, Gru very well might not have been given the chance to do his titular rising. We love to see villains being painted as actual threats and ones we want to see defeated, and these 5 nail both aspects. While we haven't seen much of him so far, Kamek from the Super Mario Bros. Movie deserves a strong spot on our list. In this movie, he really just acts as a hype man and occasional punching bag for Bowser. Kevin Michael Richardson puts on a fun performance as our favorite Magikoopa, and we'd definitely like to see more of him in the sequel.
A mustachioed human has arrived in the Mushroom Kingdom.
Somebody's gonna have to save Bowser, after all, and we all know who that's gonna be, Bowser Jr. But somebody else is gonna have to help Bowser Jr. do so, and that's gonna be our boy Kamek. So while we can't put him higher yet, we're looking forward to more spotlight from him. We'd be a bad channel if we didn't give once lovable TV bad boy Balthazar Brat a decent spot on our list.
Heist music!
Differentiating itself from the second movie, Despicable Me 3 pretty much starts right up with an introduction to its villain. Brat was a TV star, beloved for his mischievous behavior, but when he hit puberty and wasn't cute for the cameras, he was swept under the rug. Desperate to get the spotlight back, he resolved to destroy Hollywood and eventually take over the world.
Hello, Hollywood!
We're gonna pause there for a sec, because can we just talk about how genuinely good of a villain motivation that is? A former star broken by his time in Hollywood, being thrown away the second he wasn't useful anymore? It doesn't excuse his crimes, but Hollywood can be a pretty nasty place. On top of that, he's got a fun aesthetic with his fixation on music, toys, and bubblegum. He's truly a brat who never grew up, and it makes him a really fun villain, if only he got a little more story focus. Rounding out this category is probably the most surprising placement on the whole list, Jimmy Crystal from Sing 2. Once again, Buster's gotten himself in hot water by lying about what he's bringing to a performance. This time, he promises the famous musician Clay Calloway getting his team a show at the legendary talent scout Jimmy Crystal's theater, and getting Buster into some hot water. While Sing 2 is, like the first one, a pretty lighthearted movie, Mr. Crystal here actually gives it some tension. He repeatedly threatens Moon, warning him not to disappoint him, and at one point he straight up believes he's thrown Moon off of the roof of a building. We literally saw this guy commit what he thought was actual murder firsthand in an Illumination movie. That's gutsy. His selfishness and ego are ultimately his downfall. In the movie's final act, he would have been able to get a head start on stopping Buster's play if he'd had the decency to check on his daughter instead of dismissing her. But while he's pretty good, these top-tier villains are just incomparable. This is the S tier. While he does end up playing a more heroic role by the end, Wild Knuckles from Minions: Rise of Gru is one of many great anti-villains in the series. Crafty, sharp, and extremely skillful, Wild Knuckles makes his debut stealing the Zodiac Stone successfully, only to be betrayed immediately by his comrades. For the remainder of the movie, he spends his time with Gru, an aspiring child supervillain who absolutely idolizes him. This time begins with kidnapping and torture, as do many great friendships, of course, but over time, Knuckles starts to see Gru as sort of a surrogate son, even helping to ultimately save his life against the other members of the Vicious Six.
But I will not let you hurt that kid!
We give Wild Knuckles a top-tier spot because, honestly, for an entirely new character, he adds a new layer of depth to Gru, an already strong character, and also has a solid arc of his own. He's one of the highlights of his movie, and that's worth a lot. Our bronze medal of villain greatness goes to Gru from Despicable Me. Yeah, we know, he's the protagonist, but come on, man. We can't just not include Gru on this list. His whole character in the first movie is all about him learning to not be a villain. An arc that continues over the course of later films as he transitions from being a lovable supervillain to a family man.
Are you really gonna save the world?
Yes, I am.
Gru is the kind of guy you might have some disdain for at worst, but as his good points are slowly but surely revealed, you find yourself rooting for him more and more. One example is the carnival scene, where Agnes clearly hit the spaceship in the Carney's game, only to be scammed out of her prize because it wasn't knocked over. Gru then proceeds to blow up the entire game with a plasma gun, and all of a sudden, it seems like the ship was knocked over after all. Really, we could see a case for Gru being at number 1 on the list of great Illumination villains, but we want to give the top 2 spots to more pure evil characters. Our next entry is an absolute icon, a man who possesses both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah, Vector from Despicable Me is our silver medalist of villain greatness, and frankly we don't have any deep reason for it. Vector is a little bit like Hal from Megamind. You're introduced to him thinking he's just a goofy recurring character, but he turns out to be an actual threat. With an arsenal of weapons that rivals that of Gru, Vector is every bit as capable as our favorite anti-villain, and a lot more evil on top of it.
The moon is as good as ours.
When Gru freezes Vector's head out of annoyance, Vector comes back by stealing his shrink ray. Later on, he does one worse. After Gru steals the moon successfully, he kidnaps the Gorals and holds them hostage to get the moon from Gru, only for him to refuse to hold up his end of the bargain. The guy is as ruthless as he is charismatic. He's the kind of villain you just love to hate. In the new short Mooned, he tries desperately to escape back to planet Earth, meanwhile completely ignoring the minions who are also stranded and straight up offer him help to get back. Vector had an opportunity to make some new pals and get back home safely, and he totally turned it down. Oh, poop indeed, Vector. Our top 2 were very difficult to decide between, but at the end of the day, we have to give the crown of greatest Illumination villain to Bowser from the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I don't think it's a hot take to say that the moment Bowser was revealed to be voiced by Jack Black, we all knew he'd be the best part of the movie. And how right we are, Bowser has always been a character who's both genuinely evil and menacing and super fun and endearing. The Mario movie nails both these aspects of his character. Sure, there's the scenes where he's being an absolute goofball, from his ridiculous crush on Peach to his iconic piano performance for her, but there are others still where he's shown as a threat. From taking over the Ice Kingdom at the start of the movie to harming and even incinerating his minions should they disagree with him, Bowser is a threat not to be taken lightly, but he's still one you can laugh at while you quake in fear. What gives Bowser our top spot is that, as iconic as Vector is, Bowser was a character who came with big shoes to fill in this movie. Mario fans have been eating this guy up since 1985, or whenever each of us were born, so when it came to adapting him to the big screen, big things were expected. But as usual, Jack Black delivered fantastically and made the Koopa King the absolute best part of the Mario movie. And like his underling from earlier, we cannot wait to see more of him.